is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining my two great co-hosts, Federico Perez and Ralph Hanna. And guys, here we are. It's August. We finally are able to enter in a new month, and obviously, from a European standpoint, that means the leagues are back this year. This month, obviously, we'll have to wait and see how our Paraguayans do. Some may be getting some big moves, some people still waiting for some moves because it also is the last month of the transfer window. Certainly there are some rumors that are still coming about of some players that might get their big moves to Europe. We'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks. But obviously, the more important thing in this episode is that the Libertadores and the Sudamericana are back for Paraguayan teams, of course, because obviously the Sudamericana was back for some teams, the playoff teams, but the Paraguayan teams that are involved are not playing yet until this week. And of course, the Libertadores, obviously, we have Cerro Porteño taking on Palmeiras. We'll talk about that big game. And, obviously, how those teams, Olimpia and Recoleta as well, are kind of preparing for that game. But let's go with Fede first and this one, because obviously, we're in August right now. It's certainly starting to get a little bit warmer from what I've been hearing over there in Paraguay, that the weather's starting to, it's here and there, but, it's about to be spring here. It's still summer, but, fall is just right there, right around the corner. So it's going to get a little bit colder soon enough-ish. But hey, at least the exciting thing from us, from a Paraguayan perspective, is, yeah, we have the local league back, and we obviously some Paraguayan players playing abroad in Argentina, Brazil, or whatever, MLS as well. They're back as well. We saw some players scoring some goals and doing well there, but I think the Libertadores and the Sudamericana is what people are getting excited about. At least those of the teams that they support that are involved. Fede.
Yeah, of course, Roberto. How do you? How do Ralph? How do everyone listening to Guarani Vision like always? And yeah, we definitely have an exciting couple of weeks coming up. But you're looking at what's already going on, and some things caught my eye this week, like former Olimpia striker Adriano Alcaraz scoring his first goal in Mexico. That's big for him. Those guys are starting off their new chapter in their careers. I think that was against Cincinnati in the Leagues Cup, so that was an important goal for him. Just a couple minutes out there, and he's already scoring for a striker. That's huge. And then, obviously, before getting into the Libertadores and Sudamericana, we do have this Paraguayan first division Clausura that really started with everything, guys. I mean, just 1 week, 3 games, stacked all up. And after all this crazy madness, we have three unbeaten teams, Dos de Mayo, Trinidense that's up there, and Emiliano. They are yet to lose, guys. And a lot of people are yet surprised with this, that we talked about it on last week's episode about what happened with Olimpia and Cerro Porteño, this really cold and slow start. They were able to win last weekend, so they were able to bounce back, and now we're looking into what could happen as they have the double competition, as some of these teams will go into Libertadores and they will have to play also Sudamericana. We are just days away from a knockout phase in Libertadores and Sudamericana. Like I like to call it the real Libertadores. These are the good games. These are the ones that, as fans, we love to see. In Sudamericana also, because you got Recoleta going up against a giant like Boca Juniors. This is a game that's been really talked about. A lot of people in Argentina are saying, oh, there's a Recoleta in Paraguay. I thought that was just a neighborhood in Buenos Aires or something like that. I heard that a couple of times this week already, because yeah, Recoleta is one of the new teams in this competition, and they're trying to do something for themselves, like Dos de Mayo did in the first half of the semester also. So I'm really happy about this, right? Going into these games, hopefully Libertadores, some Cerro can do their thing also against Palmeiras. It's been, I don't know, a rough 12 years, right, guys? I mean, I was just looking at the anniversary this week. Nacional posted their things in social media as they look back to that. It's been 12 years since the Paraguayan team achieved the hard task of even playing a Libertadores final. So props to them. It's kind of weird, right? When you look at Gustavo Morínigo, the coach that managed that team back then, and the only team that he was able to manage this year was Rubio New, a team that's fighting for relegation, and he was there for a very little time. So that's just how football sometimes plays out. So I'm hoping for another Libertadores story. Hopefully it does come from Cerro Porteño. They already beat Palmeiras, so people are expecting big things also from that team.
Yeah, I think Ralph, I think you could make an argument, and we'll obviously discuss it when we do, but I think when you look at these three, ties as a whole, I think there are reasonable arguments for all three to qualify, just because it could be based on form, it could be based on player availability, it could be based on, obviously history as well. I think there are certain factors that you can play in. I think in situations like this, Paraguayan teams, especially as underdogs, tend to rise to the occasion. I think we can safely say that they are probably, well, maybe Palmeiras and Center is more of a coin flip given their history, but nevertheless, I think you can safely say that there are, especially given the opponents, two Brazilian teams and one Argentine team. Certainly it's not like you're playing a team from, like, I don't know, Bolivia or from Venezuela or something like that. So, when it comes to a situation like this, I think you can reasonably make an argument that the Paraguayan teams can feel, I guess, confident. The fact that they are going to play, all three of them are playing away from home, I think is certainly something that is going to be a huge factor heading into the second leg because they're all defining at home. Maybe that's a big thing. But, I think there is that feeling. But like Fede said, I think now the excitement really gets building. It really builds in. We've been waiting for these matches for quite some time, and now that we're heading into the week of, I think now the anticipation really gets to the people that support these teams.
Yeah, that's right. Hi to everybody watching and listening. And I think you picked up on a really good point that all three teams will play the second leg at home, and that's because they all won their groups, right? So it's a strange situation to see Recoleta playing Boca, and it's Recoleta are the group winners and Boca were the playoff kind of lucky loser or whatever you want to call it. But that's how it shaped up with all of these. Even Cerro and Palmeiras, who obviously were in the same group, and Cerro ended up coming top. So that's why they get to play the second leg in Asuncion. So we got a great week in Asuncion, by the way. If you're going to have a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of these games, I think it goes Recoleta, Cerro, Olimpia. So that's going to be, a lot of excitement, I think, when those second legs come, assuming that this week coming up in the first leg, nobody gets blown away because the danger of playing away your first game is obviously the tie could get away from you if it becomes, I don't know, 3-0, 4-0. But what we've seen, especially from Recoleta, who's the smallest of the three teams, and they were minders, saying that they've been able to go to the away games, right, and get results against big teams already, against, Santos, San Lorenzo. So I think they've got a bit of confidence there in their own ability. Olimpia have their history, right? They've done this many times before in big games, and they're probably the most successful non-Argentinian side in Brazil. I might, I'll throw that out there, but I'd say probably they are. And then you have Cerro, who have had this very difficult kind of series with Palmeiras over the last few years, but they did get the win this year, and they've got a manager in Ariel Holan who's gone to finals of continental competition. So there, I think, there's all these kind of ingredients for them to feel maybe a bit more confident. And let's just throw in the World Cup kind of the World Cup, right? Because I was watching a game, I was watching Atlanta United in Philadelphia, and I thought it's funny that Miguel Almiron and Junior Alonso are back in Philadelphia, having last played France there, right? And now they're playing a game. They were down to 10 men, by the way, and they're trying to hold out a 2-0 lead, and it got away from them, and they ended up losing. But they were just defending, and I was like, wow, they must be going back to their World Cup kind of experience. And you have that in Cerro, especially with Gustavo Velasquez, who played some of those games in the World Cup and knows what it's like to be an underdog. But I think the whole country feels that, right? They feel that from the World Cup, there's this feeling of, we have a way of playing and we can project this internationally and we can maybe get some results from it. So I think all of that combined means we've got a great week of football coming up with the Libertadores and Sudamericana.
Absolutely. And I guess we'll go into that right now. But before we do, we'll look at what's going on in our Clausura and our División Profesional over there in Paraguay. As we look at the updates, it's good that we're talking about the three teams that are playing in the Libertadores and the Sudamericana because they're coming off of wins, actually. Cerro defeating Luqueño, Olimpia defeating Rubio Ñu, their first wins of the season. Recoleta also beating Nacional. We also saw Libertad lose for the first time so far this season. They lost to Guarani. So the only two teams that are unbeaten at this moment, in terms of, well, there's three of them actually. If you look at the table, there's two teams that have won games, but they haven't lost. In Sportivo Trinidense and Dos de Mayo, they currently are top first and second respectively. And then you have Ameliano, the only team to not win a single game but not lose. So they drew all three of their games. They tied the Dos de Mayo team. Obviously, looking into today, actually, Rubio New take on Recoleta, Ameliano take on Cerro Porteño, and Dos de Mayo take on Olimpia today and tomorrow, respectively. So, you got all the three teams right there, kind of in this kind of race, I would say. I mean, obviously, I guess let's start with Olimpia, actually. Let's start with Olimpia because, certainly Olimpia, were a team that obviously needed to get their win, especially before the Libertadores tie, and they were incredible, winning 5-0 on the day on Rubio New. But feels like anyone was talking about just one player on that day, and that was Tim Payne. Yes, Tim Payne, the New Zealand player that made his transfer after the World Cup, makes his debut. He comes on the 69th minute, Ralph, and I'll go to you first on this one. Makes his debut in the 69th minute, and then he scores a really brilliant goal in the 81st minute as Olimpia won that 5-0. That was Olimpia's last goal, actually, of the day. Great game as well from Romeo Benitez, from Eduardo Delmas. Certainly a team that Vitamina Sanchez is really getting in. And, obviously we'll have to wait and see how they do against Dos de Mayo tomorrow and then heading into the game over there in Rio de Janeiro against Vasco. But I think getting that win that they did against Rubio New is a really good confidence boost.
Yeah, it was. We talked about it on the show, like that they hadn't won those two games, first time since 2002 that it had happened. That there was suddenly a bit of pressure on the champions, even before their first big game, which is of course this match against Vasco. But there was a feeling like, what's going on here? Have we lost all the momentum? And they responded really well against Rio New, which is a team that is unfortunately destined for relegation at the moment, right? The way it stands, they really need to find some points because they didn't get enough in Apertura either to try and stay up. And it was one of those games that you saw, yeah, you immediately saw the difference in quality. But I think picking up from the thread of last week where we're saying how the referees like to let the game go on and they're not going to call as many fouls, that's going to really punish a team that's maybe not at the same level of fitness or organization for pressing. So if we go to the last goal, the Tim Payne goal, which everyone wants to talk about, there's just huge spaces at that moment from the Rubio New defense. But it's just because there's like this offset of some people have tried to go and press high. Tim Payne has done very well to play a ball like through the lines, and then he's just run on, and suddenly there's all this spaces opened up. And actually, it's a very interesting goal, right? Because I don't know if we'll see him score another goal like this. Unlikely, maybe, because he just goes into like the number 10 position. He doesn't go out on the outside. He comes back inside and the ball sits up for him and he kind of hits it for first time, but curling. And it's like he's just hit that so well, so perfectly. And it's kind of a dream moment for him because honestly, like I don't think anybody expected as a right back to be, oh, he's going to be goal scoring. Maybe let's look at assists. That could be interesting. But for him to like debut and then score a goal within 12 minutes and such a good goal, it was kind of that's like a dream moment for him. But to be very kind of, I don't know, put a dampener on it. I don't think we'll see them Olympia have like that kind of space and those kind of games again against it was a really poor Rubio New team. This week is going to be totally different. I'm guessing because they on Saturday they have to go to Dos de Mayo. They have to go up to Pedro Juan Caballero. That's not a great place to go at any time of year, but especially not a few days before you have your trip to Brazil. So I'm guessing we're going to see kind of a mixed team or a slightly rotated team, which might mean Tim Payne gets a start. You never know, but it does mean we might not see again the best team or the best 11, and that's going to be a really tough match for them up there because we've just talked about how Dos de Mayo are playing very well. So it's actually going to be quite an interesting game in terms of I don't think we'll see the same Olimpia, and you've got a very good Dos de Mayo, so we might see Dos de Mayo coming out on top on that one.
Yeah, the coach is just gonna have to rotate players constantly as they play important games. Also in Sudamericana, this team just needs to keep growing. After having such a successful apertura, that's what I'm hoping from them that they develop into an even better team as they look maybe beyond this year. Let's not forget that they're already qualified to Libertadores. So you're hoping for this project to even get better and better. Just as you're looking at, they're not letting go of many pieces. They're trying to bring in better players. Even you had Brian Romero score his first goal already. That was big. I think obviously Tim Payne. He took all the lights. Everything was on him. All the focus, but. I mean, I'm looking at this team and I'm looking at real good performances again from Eduardo Del Mas. This is one of the kids that's just really growing and he's evolving. He just looks more and more natural as the games go, and he really made that cut after what happened in the Apertura. He's still in the team and he's still a starter, so he's become an important player. And he's even making those plays that the forwards need. So he's making those right passes and he's connecting the team. He's been a very important player. And some people here in Paraguay they're saying he's the next Jewel, guys. I mean, he's the next player to sell here in Paraguay. I don't know if I'm up to that level or in my opinion yet, but he's definitely catching my attention, especially playing for a big team like Olimpia. The project is apparently to have him at least for the Libertadores next year. They don't want to sell him yet, even though there were apparently a lot of people or a lot of clubs behind him. So, but for Olimpia, I mean, Tim Payne, that was just quick, guys. I mean, I didn't expect it to go that fast. It must be, I don't know what that mystica that they talk about Olympia all this time, that Olympia aura that got Tim Payne going so fast in his new team. I mean, I didn't think he was gonna go out and attack the way that he did when he got the ball. So I was already surprised by the play that he was trying to make, trying to show himself out there. Maybe he saw that the game was up for it. Rubio New was just beaten up, and it was his opportunity, and he really took over. So to see him come up in a game like that, in a stance like that one, and in front of so many fans, people were expecting for him to go in the game and make a difference. And you do, and you make that impact. I mean, for me, it's just if I'm on the stands, I'm just out there clapping. Not a lot of players can do that. So he showed what kind of a player he is. And I'm really happy about that because a lot of people were questioning that before he came here. Even me, I was saying, "Who is Tim Payne? What do we know about him? Is he really going to fit in here in Paraguay in a big team like Olimpia that they play under pressure all the time?" But look, first game and he already scored. He already made that impact. His goal went viral. Has been watched all over the world. I mean, just inspirational stuff, guys, from me. I mean, from someone that took this challenge late in his career, even. Uh, Taking a flight from the other side of the world, coming here to an unknown country. I mean, for me personally, I just admire what he's really doing. Hopefully, he can take this as an example. And I don't know if I'm Raul Cáceres right now, I'd be a bit worried maybe that I got somebody that wants my minutes because Raul is not that kind of player that usually leaves the games. But apparently, Tim Payne was doing good stuff in the practice. That's why the coach wanted to have him in there. And just like I said at the beginning, he's going to need the rotation guys. Olympia's going to have a lot of games, and that's why he wants to see everybody before the calendar tightens up.
Yeah, no, I think it's certainly something to keep an eye out for, especially now, obviously, with now the league really getting a bit more tighter now that the big teams have won. So that means, and you have a Super Classico coming up as well this month, that we also have to realize that's to have it this early, I guess, in the season also can change the way how the season goes. So yeah, Olimpia obviously on the right track. Cerro Porteño, of course, the other team to talk about, they got their first win, getting the win against Luqueño, winning 3-0, goals from Morel, a brace actually from Morel, and then Vegetti scoring as well. So obviously, Fede, I'll go to you on this one. They needed this win. I think Ariel Ojala needed this sort of confidence boost, especially after it was the best start so far. Obviously now they got Emiliano tomorrow, so certainly that for them could be a good confidence boost. And then they're off to São Paulo to take on Palmeiras. So, you feel like they're on that right curve to really improve, but they need to get it even better before the big game this midweek in Brazil.
Yeah, this team is just so weird, guys. I mean, you look at it one game, it's one team. You look at it on the next game, it's just a totally different team because even the coach likes to change up the names also. I mean, Morel wasn't in this team the first two games, and now all of a sudden he's the star of the team because he scored two goals. He is a very important player if he's fit, if he's 100%. I was told that he wasn't the starting team during the preseason, so it's kind of weird that he didn't start the year. with the team. Maybe it had to do with him not being 100% after, all the physical work and stuff like that. I know that it's kind of hard for certain players after that, after going through that. So, the team is starting to kind of fill in. You don't have Iturbe in there yet. He hasn't been available yet. So there are a couple of important pieces I still think that need to come together for this team to really show what they're made out of, or what they got prepared for, at least for this second semester, because it is Holland's team, and he's gonna have to respond to that pressure all the time. He brought a couple of players that just haven't fit in these first games, so now he's gonna probably look back at those players that did fit in those roles and that really worked out in the first semester. That's what I kind of saw against Sportivo Luqueño. No more trying out stuff, but just putting out players that already did their thing in the first semester. And I don't know, I still have my doubts about this goalkeeper, guys. I know Manuel Rofo, it's hard to fill in those shoes, I mean, their last goalkeeper was just so important, and he was a difference maker. I mean, he was winning games for this team, and he's not yet that Cerro Porteño goalkeeper that they need. So hopefully they work out that situation, because I think right now for Ariel Hola it's Rofo or Rofo. Like, there's nobody else. I think he's gonna keep on going with this goalkeeper, even though he does have two other very good goalkeepers on the bench. But I think he's gonna stick with him. So besides that, I really don't know what to expect out of this midfield. I think he's just gonna keep on rotating guys, and hopefully they get Pablo Begetti going, the striker. They need to get him hot before they play Palmeiras, because he's going to be vital in those games, just like he was against Junior in the important games in the group stage, Ralph. That's what I'm expecting for Begetti to come through in these games that are coming up against Palmeiras.
Yeah, I mean, he finally got his goal against Luqueño, but it was a very kind of bundled goal. Like, both the first two goals, by the way, Cerro were leading 2-0 at halftime, and for me it was one of the most unconvincing 2-0 leads, because they did dominate possession, but both the goals were kind of, I think Morales is only given after VAR, like, did it go over the line, did it not, kind of thing. But it was again a scramble around the goal mouth, and then Vegetti's as well is like basically a tap in. And you just felt like Holland got all the players back, like Fede said. I think it's only Roffo in goal and maybe Cañete who hadn't played in the Apertura, but still he's playing with the back three and the wing backs, and then he's trying to get the best out of Cecilio Dominguez, which I think if Cecilio was playing well, he's got the best position, which is not to put him wide, almost like a 10. But the problem is he's not playing very well at the moment, so he wasn't really finding the spaces or making a difference. And actually, I think it's Ariel Gamarra came in the second half and maybe showed a bit more in that kind of position. So, I mean, there's a lot of question marks still, despite the fact they won 3-0, right? So you'd think, oh, this is a positive thing, but you just looked at the way the goals were scored. Luqueño didn't give much either. They're also going through the motions. They're not far off relegation as well, so they have to be careful. But you just, yeah, you weren't convinced yet. I guess if we want to talk about some positives from Cerro, I think Blas Riveros coming back that's going to be a big positive. Once he gets back to full fitness, he's basically the best wing back you have in Paraguay. So having him, and if you want to play the system of a wing back, he's going to work really well. And then the Morel return to the team and just scoring goals, which isn't really what he does. The second goal was really good, by the way. The second goal, I think two players that maybe had shots that were blocked, and Morel was just like, right, that's how you score a goal, and just like smashed it into the top corner. Um, but having him and Pires de Monte gave him a lot of control. They were much more controlled in possession than when they played, for example, Bobadilla in previous games. And so that's one thing in the league. Having those two is going to be very interesting, because then they can dominate a bit more possession. Against Palmeiras, they're not going to be able to do that. So we'll probably see a different setup. And again, against Ameliano this weekend, I don't think, for example, Morel will play. I don't think Cecilio will play, because he needs to. These are players that maybe can't play very, what's the word, like, very repetitive, every 3 days kind of thing. So you're gonna have a look at some rotation in the Ameliano game, and then we'll see who makes the trip to Palmeiras to play a really informed Brazilian side.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be really fun to see. And I guess we'll mention Recoleta as well. I guess we'll go into now what to talk about for their game against Boca. Certainly they're also coming off the win, like I said, against Nacional, a good Nacional team as well. We have to mention that, Fede. But now, obviously, heading into, obviously today against Rio New and then against Boca, I mean, certainly this is a team that I think has continued to surprise a lot of people. I mean, they left it really late in the group stage. This is something that we need to understand. The team that, Jorge Gonzalez is really getting with this side. But, you know, it's going to be tough to see what happens in a game like this. I think when you have, a lot of good players, they have Charpenter and Dominguez and Baez and Barzahuk if he plays, they have a good team, Ferreira, the goalkeeper. I mean, it is a team that I feel can do something. Obviously we'll go into the first game against Boca Juniors. It's also a Boca side that, let's be real, it is a good team. I think we have to obviously respect that, but it's not going on good terms. I mean, they barely went through O'Higgins. They had to go through a penalty shootout to win that one. I think certainly it feels as if though it is a Boca side that doesn't really have an identity at the minute. And again, there is that pressure of performing in a game like this where, they haven't won. You talk about Paraguayan teams not going to intercontinental to going to continental finals. A Boca team that haven't won a continental tournament in so long, and they were one of the big powerhouses. So, not even a Sudamericana. That just shows how much they really want to win this one. And I think they understand. And we've seen, Boca under the pressures of wanting to succeed, but sometimes that pressure gets to them. It's not what I'm saying is it's not really looking good in the Boca world at the minute, even if they just won their first game the other day. So maybe this could be a situation for Recoleta to take advantage where, they know that they're the underdog. They played that role already before in the group stage when they took on Santos and San Lorenzo, and they know what it's like to be in this position. So you feel to yourself like, hey guys, we're going to play in La Bombonera. We should not feel this pressure at all. We should go and enjoy. That's a line that you always like to say, Fede. Go and enjoy playing in a game like this and these big opportunities because it's never these are things that a lot of these players and for the club as itself Recoleta as a whole they're getting a chance to play in one of the most historic stadiums in the world, one of the biggest teams in the world too. So you know you feel as if though maybe the pressure is really on the host to do something here and Recoleta can go and try to surprise the world again.
For Recoleta, guys, it's been a year of making dreams come true after playing Neymar Santos at the beginning of the year and beating that team and really having a strong performances in both games. I think this team is ready for it. I mean, they do really well against against the big teams in first division, against Cerro, against Olimpia. They've been competing in every single game. Nobody stomps on them. So I think they're ready for it. I think they're ready and they know what's coming. I think they followed everything that Boca has been doing lately, so they know what kind of team they're gonna face. Even though Boca, I believe, have gotten better with this coach. I think they look like they're in a better form right now. They look like they're a better, well put together team. But I still believe in this Recoleta. I'm still believing in this Canario. This is one of the teams that I've been following all year, and there's so many stories in that locker room of just guys that are gonna play probably, for the first time in their careers, a huge game like this, a stage of a Continental Cup, no doubt about it. But and that could either be good for you or be bad for you because that pressure can get to you and you can make a mistake out there and not be able to fix it, and unfortunately that could be a scar for the rest of your career, or it could be that one chance that you thought you were never going to have, right? And I'm talking about people like Paul Charpentier that was called up to this team after Alan Wilk was moved to Lanús. So they went out in the market and they hired a center forward. And I don't think Paul Charpentier had in his mind that he was going to be playing against Boca at this stage of the Sudamericana a couple months ago. So for him, it's a great opportunity. I don't know if he's going to get a start, but he's definitely going to have minutes out there. And I'm talking about him because he's going to be very important alongside Aldo Gonzalez, Kevin Parsahuk. Those are the strikers that have been playing lately. I think out of the three, Aldo Gonzalez is probably the one that has been playing better, and it has been more consistent also with the goals. I love Wilfrido Baez. He's also a very exciting player. I think, he has that age, he has that experience, and in these kind of games, I do think we're gonna see the best out of him. Nelson Ferreira is another one, the goalkeeper. He's always showed up in these kind of stages. I do think he's gonna have a lot to work with in both games. So I'm hoping for another huge performance from him, just like he did have in Sudamericana before. So hopefully the whole team works out, guys, and hopefully after they face Boca, we're talking about Recoleta, the big surprise in Sudamericana that left Boca out of the competition somehow, maybe even penalties. I think it could be that kind of series, Ralph. I think it could be that kind of showdown where Recoleta is going to go in with their strategy. They're going to try to aim for the long series and probably put as nervous as they can Boca, especially over there in Buenos Aires, because this is where they're going to play the first game.
Yeah, I mean, you say penalties, and that's how it all started. Don't forget, right? They beat Nacional on penalties to get into the group stage, and it was Ivan Pires who scored the winning penalty. I mean, his name we've forgotten about him because unfortunately he like a week after I think he did his cruciate ligaments and he's out for the rest of the year. But I mean, to think of just some of all these people that have been part of the Recoleta story, because we just mentioned Alan Wilk as well. Obviously had the goals, the important goals, and then has now left. And so now Charpentier comes in who's Argentinian, and so maybe has that extra motivation in a game against one of the grandes against Boca. So I mean, there's all these stories there. Just to mention a couple of players. I mean, I know Fede already said Wilfrido Baez, but he had a great game against Nacional. I think he scored and assisted in that match, and he's one of those attacking players on the left. And if you think about him, he's never really played in a big club. He's bounced around. Like I remember him at, I don't know, General Diaz or Resistencia. He's not that guy that's always at a big club, but he's always performs very well in the smaller sides that he plays for. He's about 32 now, so I mean he has plenty of experience. And then Aldo Gonzalez as well. I mean, Aldo Gonzalez has been very exciting in terms of being able to take players on and actually have some final product. Because you get those players that sometimes are exciting to watch, but then there's no kind of end product. Aldo Gonzalez is out there making assists, scoring goals, and so he could be another surprise because between him and Baez, if they pick up the ball, they're going to be able to try and break through in terms of on the counter attack. They're going to be very exciting. So I think we're going to see definitely the similar like games we saw against San Lorenzo and against Santos, particularly of a very defensive team. We haven't seen, apart from I think San Lorenzo, we haven't seen Recoleta manage to not be scored on, or maybe against Cuenca actually. But in general, they do concede, but they've scored in nearly every game. So they're always, even though they're a defensive team, they always find that way to get a goal. And so let's see the way it comes about, right? As I think at one point it was a penalty. Sometimes it's been a really well taken goal from outside the box. Sometimes it's just been a great team counter-attacking move. They've always found a way to get a goal, and let's see if they can do it in the Bombonera, which is obviously a huge moment for any team that gets to go there, and for a group of players, especially this group of players that many will not have been there. It's going to be a huge night for them to try and do something and stay in it for the second leg.
What do you say, Fede? You think we get a surprise at the Bombonera?
Is a tie a surprise? Because I'm aiming for the
I'd
tie,
say I'd say
guys.
so. I'd say so. Yeah, absolutely. I'd say so.
Yeah,
100%.
I don't think it's a surprise, but I'm aiming for a tie. I think it's gonna be a 1-0 just because of what Ralph said. I was going for a 0-0 tie, but just because Ralph said they score pretty much on every match, which is true, I'm gonna go for a one, 1-1, 1-1.
Ralph. I mean, it wouldn't even be the biggest win ever because they're still Capiatà, right? They
Of
won one
course,
0
the
in
Capietazo,
Bombonera,
yeah.
but
But there could be the
no,
Recoletazo. Who knows?
Recoletazo, yeah. I don't know if they can do that. Yeah, I think it could be a tie because we've seen them do. I mean, every game they've managed to get a draw in the away matches, or they even beat San Lorenzo, but they've always found a way to not be beaten in the tournament. And who says like now so anything's going to change? So I think I'll go for a tie as well, but maybe 0-0. they'll manage to see out the 0-0.
Yeah, I was thinking Boca just win it barely 1-0, but then like you said, Ralph, they know what it's like to play these type of games, so they can frustrate the opposition. So I think I'm gonna go for a 0-0 in this one, which again would be huge and obviously would set up a really big matchup at home at the Defensores next time round. So we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, we'll go to the next Sudamericana game with Olimpia taking on Vasco da Gama over there at the Estadio San Januario in Rio de Janeiro, a Vasco team that also, Fede, I'll go to you on this one, that is not doing well. We talk about Boca not doing well, and we'll do the opposites in terms of Palmeiras when we talk about them in a bit. Vasco are really in danger at the minute. They're currently in the relegation zone. They're fighting it out with teams like Gremio, Inter, Santos, so big teams over there. But at the minute, they're not looking good at the time. I don't think they've won a single game. Yeah, they haven't won yet since the before the World Cup and then after the World Cup. So they've been looking really bad at the minute. And maybe this is an advantage for Olimpia as well. Obviously there is that level of familiarity that they already played beforehand. So, that's obviously the main thing in this one, that they already know what it's like to play them. They've beaten them, but also Vasco have beaten them as well. So they kind of, share their kind of matches and their wins. And obviously the last time that they played over there, Vasco won 3-0, but it's a different Olimpia team. It's a different, kind of mentality in that sense. They ended up winning the Apertura, certainly they got some players in as well. So who's to say that Olimpia can't go and try to, I don't think this would be a surprise in this case, just because the way that obviously the familiarity goes into both these two teams, but I think Olimpia have a really good chance of trying to get something over there before heading to the Defensores.
Yeah, and they got ready for this one, guys, right? I mean, they went to Brazil and played a friendly during the off season. So they knew that this was the game, this was the series that they were aiming for. Thankfully, that win against Rubio New came right on time. So yeah, I think that a 2-1 is gonna be a win for Olympia. Just a 2-1. Just gonna be a tight one. I don't think Olympia can blow this team away. Can blow this team, especially playing away. I think they're gonna stop on them when they play here in the Defensores del Chaco. I think that's when they're gonna wrap up the series. But for this first game, I think it's just gonna be a 2-1. It's gonna be a kind of a rough one. Olimpia had a rough game over there in Brazil last time they played, so it's not gonna be easy for Olimpia.
Do you see Ralph? Do you see Olimpia as really the favorites in this one? Do you think that adds in a bit more pressure, especially given the form of both of these two teams, or do you feel like it's still a Brazilian side? You're playing in Brazil, and it's a big Brazilian side as well. Let's not beat around the bush. Vasco are a big team, if not the biggest. But is that still something to consider, or do you feel like it goes either way in this one?
No, I think still traveling to Brazil, even whatever the team is in their moment, right? It's still there's still like a certain aura that you have to kind of fight against. But I think we did talk about it in the last game that because it's Sudamericana, not Libertadores, that's a really important point. The Brazilian sides in Sudamericana, they do have to keep an eye on the league. The league is still important, and Vasco are in this problem at the moment, right? In this kind of relegation fight, so they're maybe not fully focused on Sudamericana, where to Fede's point, Olimpia has been gearing up for this. They don't need to do anything in the league. They're already qualified for the Libertadores. And it's interesting that a lot of people criticized the preseason because they said Olympia's had such a, well prepared preseason, and then they went and lost their first two games. But I think they weren't really focused on those first two games. They were focused on this one. This is kind of where their season starts, if that makes sense. And so I think, yeah, I think we'll see a very motivated Olimpia. I think we'll see whatever the team is. I don't think it'll be anything that's a big surprise. I think Vitamina Sanchez has probably been preparing for this game since June 18th when they started the preseason. I think that they've really set up for this game. They're going to look at plans and how they can, how they can focus on weaknesses. So I think you have a very prepared Olympia side. I don't know though if I'm as like confident as Fede that they'll definitely go and win because winning in Brazil is difficult. So I was leaning more on a tie. I don't see them losing. I don't see them losing the match. Like I say, I mean, I think they have the motivation, they have the preparation. There's so much riding on this particular match, but I think they'll be happy with a tie, knowing that they lost 3-0 last time, but then they'll really feel that they can they can, win the second leg at home quite comfortably in front of what's going to be a packed house at Defensores del Chaco.
So what are you saying in this one?
I'll go for a tie. Go for a tie.
I'll go on Fede this one. I'll say 1-0. I think that, it's still hard to play in Brazil. I think Vasco also understand the responsibility that this tournament kind of will save their season in a way, just because of how badly it's been so far in the domestic league. So yeah, I'm gonna say 1-0 Olimpia. And I don't know if that's gonna be the only result in Brazil. We'll talk about now with Palmeiras, Cerro Porteño, because this is really, of the three games, I think, Ralph, will go to you on this one. Of the three games, this is the biggest of the three, just because, obviously the history and, certainly Palmeiras as this powerhouse. You talk about Vasco as a team that are not doing so well at the minute. Palmeiras are on the opposite form, right there, top of the league, 47 points. They're 8 points shy. Obviously, Flamengo have a game in hand, but still, that's a huge gap to go in. So it looks like Palmeiras are probably going to win another Brasileirao. And, obviously, the Paraguayan factor is in that. Gustavo Gomez, Ramon Sosa, Mauricio now. We'll have to wait and see if Gustavo Gomez is fit. I think I saw some reports saying that he's injured. So we'll have to see if he gets there. But, that is always the big thing. It feels as if, though, it's like kind of the that situation of the, Charlie Brown kicking the football. Obviously, in this case, Cedro did kind of kick the football because they beat Palmeiras already this time, but can they do it again? Can they do it in such a big game like this? Because one thing is to play Palmeiras in the group stage where you could technically afford to lose and you could still qualify, but this is, it's win or go home. This is obviously a situation that Cedro need to finally be able to break that kind of curse of always losing to Palmeiras in a game like this. So it's gonna be a really interesting matchup. I mean, certainly going away is certainly the big advantage that you want to have. And I think you brought up a good point as well at the beginning. It's like you don't want Cedro to be in a position where they are losing 1-0 or 2-0. Then they have to go and chase the game over there at La Nueva Olla, which again, I'm sure similar to what Fede said, it's going to be a huge crowd anyway. But, I think it's that one result that you need that can give you that hope. Even again, a draw would be huge for this Cedro side. But I think now, because they've already beaten them beforehand, they need to go out and try to get the win. I think now, not losing, oh, sorry, getting a win there would not feel as if though it would be something, out of the ordinary. They've done it before, so now they have to try and do it again. But of course, they understand the huge task of how great Abel Ferreira's side is.
Yeah, right. I mean, the first thing, yeah, repeating the trick of winning 1-0. I mean, if you remember, it was a great goal by Vegete. So, you'd need to reproduce that magic. And then we were just talking about the goalkeeper. I'm just going back to that game. I mean, I think you would have to make, well, 5 saves is the amount Arias made in that game. So, I mean, you'd need Rofo to be in a level that we haven't seen yet. So, there's a lot would have to happen to repeat that trick. I mean, one thing that's making Palmeiras so dangerous at the moment, you mentioned they're top of the league by 8 points, so they're not too worried about league position, so they can focus. But also, Palmeiras is one of these crazy teams that just played so much football for so long without a break because they were always getting to Libertadores finals. They played the Club World Cup. Like these guys never had a rest until now. In the World Cup, they finally got like almost 2 months of not playing football, which was obviously some of them went to the World Cup. But for Palmeiras, this was like the first time in ages they just got to like have a breather, reset a bit. And they came back, and since they've come back, they've been doing really well, right? And particularly Mauricio and Ramon Sosa. In the case of Ramon Sosa, he didn't play any football in the World Cup. Mauricio obviously didn't play as much. He was used off the bench and they're coming back with this kind of hunger, motivation. But the team's been scoring like 3 goals, 4 goals. They lost the second leg at the weekend in the cup, but 3-2, right? I mean, there's goals coming everywhere, and so Sarah, I've got to try and stem that flow. I think is the key thing, right? Is like not to get scored on twice. That's what you have to avoid. If they lose 1-0 and bring it back to La Hoya, they're going to feel they have a chance knowing that they've won before. If they lose 2-0, like you said, chasing the game so hard against a team like Palmeiras because they can pick you off. So I think what we'll see, I mean, I'm assuming we're going to see the Holland go with what is his back three, which he's been using, but it becomes more of a back five when you're defending a lot. And we're going to see him to try and use those two wing backs in different moments on the break. Use one of the two because that was something interesting I saw in the Luqueño game. We started to see it like if Riveros went, actually Fabricio dropped back a bit, but if Fabricio went, Blas Riveros dropped a bit. So he was very careful, like how he tried to manage that team, and I think he's thinking about Palmeiras and just not getting, if you get into a back and forth with Palmeiras, you're going to lose. So he's just trying to find like how he can hurt them, but how he can balance the game as well. Um, yeah, it's going to be. I don't know. I feel like this is a really tough match for Cerro. There's especially, I think, in a way, having beaten them in the group stage was worse going into this match because now Palmeiras have that extra motivation as well. So yeah, I don't know if I want to call it, but it's going to be a really tough one for Cerro.
Yeah, I know a lot of people laughed again when Palmeiras came out in that draw, and they said, "Okay, here we go again." And a lot of Cerro Porteño fans are tired of seeing that green jersey in front of them on the way in this Libertadores. But they are one of the best teams in South America, guys. So you got to give it to them, just like Ralph said. I mean, they're catching on fire right before they got to play Cerro Porteño, and I love this matchup because these are the kind of teams that you need to beat to be a Libertadores champion. So hopefully Cerro can be up to it. I don't think they're gonna be up to it in Brazil just because of how strong this team is over there. I think during the group stage they were kind of relaxed. I kind of felt it that way. And even though, yeah, Cerro got the historic win with the Bigetti goal, this was going to be much, much harder. And I don't feel that Cerro Porteño's defense, and I just mentioned the goalkeeper, I don't think they gotten stronger. So I do think they're going to get scored on, and not just once over there. So that's my worry, right? Just like Ralph said, I think they're going to have trouble in that sense. Palmeiras attack is just so hot right now with Lopez, with Ramon Sosa score, with Mauricio, just John Arias is killing it. The Colombian also, he's playing really, really well. So I think Cerro's just gonna have their hands full with everything that Palmeiras has over there. So hopefully they can get out there alive, guys, and bring it back here in front of Cerro Porteño fans and aim for a historic game again where they're gonna need to score a couple goals. That's what I think. I think they're not gonna have it easy at all over there against Palmeiras, and I do think it's gonna be a Palmeiras win by 2 goals. Hopefully, I'm totally wrong about this because Cerro already proved me wrong in the first semester, beating this team and qualifying in the first spot. But I think this Palmeiras just turns it up in the second semester, and they have the coach with the experience to do it. So, unfortunately, I don't see it happening in Brazil, Robert.
Ralph, are you more optimistic?
I'd like to be, but I'm finding it difficult because what I want to see is if we see the Cerro of the Copa Libertadores in this game rather than the Cerro of the league, then I'm a bit more confident. So is can they continue to do that and surprise us midweek when at the weekends they really haven't been very convincing. I don't know. I still can't see them. I can't see them getting a result. I'm more hopeful. I'm hoping it'll be a 2-1 to Palmeiras. So that one goal will be all important coming back to La Hoya.
I'm gonna say 1-0 Palmeiras, which I think would still be a good result for Cedro going into the next game, just because obviously the away goal is not used in that. So yeah, obviously it's gonna be big. We'll obviously talk about it on Guarani Vision as we always do next week when we talk about those games. It's gonna be a huge one. But before we go and close it out here, we have Copa Paraguay games officially announced already. We got some games in. I'll put it out for you so that everyone can listen because it's interesting how it works. It's a round of 32. So we have Resistencia against Cerro Porteño, Real Caballero against Juan León Mallorquín against Rio Nu, 29 de septiembre against San Lorenzo, 4 de mayo against Frugencio Yergos, 1 de marzo against Tempetaril, Sportivo Iteño against Guaraní, Humanidad against 2 de mayo, Sol de América against Sportivo Trinidense, Cristóbal Colón of Juan Augusto Saldívar against Olimpia, Paraguay against Sportivo Luqueño, Deportivo Santaní against Recoleta, Guarani against 12 de octubre, Deportivo Obrero against Fernando Lamora, Tacuarí against Libertad, Independiente Campo Grande against Sportivo Emiliano, and Benjamín Aceval against Nacional. I mean, Fede, I'll go to you on this one because you watch a lot of Intermed, you watch a lot of lower league as well. So, Ralph, you also keep an eye out as too. But what are the things that are sticking out to you in this Copa Paraguay? A tournament that obviously, we see a lot of surprises. One of the big surprises that Cedro have not won this tournament or have even been to a final, and they get Resistencia there. So, I mean, are there some games that you're seeing that you think maybe there are some surprises, some teams to look out for, some, ojo with this team or something like that? Yeah, what are you looking forward to in this third stage of the Copa Paraguay?
Yeah, this is the third stage, guys. This is the stage where we have the first division team, so it gets more attention now, right? But yeah, building up to this situation, we had a couple of UFI teams that come from the inner leagues that were able to survive. Just two of them, you mentioned them, Roberto. Club Cuatro de Mayo from Capivaru, they are champions of San Pedro, their district. They got the right to play against Fulgencio Yegros. Now, a very interesting team. I don't think they're gonna have enough to go up against Fulgencio Yegros. Even though you look at the format, and that's where it's kind of weird, right? I mean, how many teams does the UFI team need to be to play eventually against the first division team? That's where I think they make it way too hard for these teams from the countryside, which is what they really want to do, right? And then you have Deportivo Obrero from Amambay. This is a team from Capitan Bado, close to the Brazilian border. They beat Olimpia of Itá. That was kind of a surprise. I did not have them beating a very traditional team, also from a lower division, but they were able to do it with a hat trick, even from Rodrigo Melo, a Brazilian player that plays in this team as a center forward. So you maybe get these kind of weird performances in these kind of games. Now we'll see as they move into the next stage how they can do, right? But they play in bigger stadiums. These are teams that barely get together to practice, guys. Let's be realistic. 2-3 times at the most during the week. So it is really hard for them. But to have the opportunity to play in the big stage, to have their games be televised is huge for them. So for me, it's still about the format. I know it's Copa Paraguay number 8, I believe already, but there's still a lot of details that I think they can manage better. They make some teams play very far away from where they're actually from, and that just leaves their fan base totally out of the opportunity of being there with their team when they have such a big game. We also had the first walkover of the tournament in these 8 years in this competition in these 2026. So there's a lot of details apparently that the FA is still not under control fully. So that's where I want to see this competition go forward. And then when you get to these kind of stages, you have teams from intermediate, second division, or even first division that they don't play with their first teams. They play with their alternative teams, they play with their B teams, even their C teams, and they don't take it that serious. So that's when you're thinking to yourselves, is this competition what you want? You have General Caballero that won it last time around, and then they were relegated. They went to second division. So you're thinking to yourselves, are they really a deserving champion, or is it just because of the way that the tournament is formatted? I still have my doubts. I still have a lot of questions under this Copa Paraguay, which is still very interesting, guys. I mean, it's very exciting to see all these teams, teams from all over the country, from all over all the different divisions play against each other. This is the only opportunity they get, guys. So that's what makes it very exciting. It's 90 minutes or penalties, so it's even better.
Yeah, I think this year as well they suffered a little bit about playing all the games during the World Cup because the competition went on during the World Cup, and of course like the world's attention, even most Paraguayans' attention is somewhere else. So we're suddenly all of a sudden at this stage having missed out on maybe some of more of the stories you get earlier in the competition, to Fede's point, like with the UFI teams. But yeah, one team I'm interested just to see how they do is Benjamin Aceval, because they're from the Chaco region, same as 12 de Junio, and they're actually top of Intermedia at the moment, doing very well. But from what I could see, like a fairly experienced team. Like it's not like they've got any young players. They managed to band together a lot of experienced people, and they're doing very well in Intermedia. But it would be interesting to see how they do. That's a really traditional club, by the way. They're much older than 12 de Junio in that Chaco region, but they've never managed to go to the top division, and so that's one to keep an eye on. I can't remember who they're playing now off the top of my head. You just said it, but I think is are they playing? Is it
Nacional.
Nacional? Yeah, Benjamin Nacional, which is quite interesting because if you look, yeah, probably the clubs are set up not that far away in time, like in their history, but obviously they've had two trajectories so different, right? One team's never been in the top division, and the other one, of course, was in the Copa Libertadores final, as we were just talking about. So that would be a cool match to check out.
Fede, I mean, we're used to shocks in this one. Is there any shock that you might see in this one?
Oh, that's an interesting one. Just because it's really hard to see if the first division teams are gonna put their best teams out there, right? I wouldn't be surprised if Resistencia takes out Cerro Porteño just because of all the trouble they've had before in this Copa Paraguay. They usually leave it early. I think Olympia's gonna go through Cristobal Colon. I don't think they're gonna have trouble there, but I mean surprises. I think we're gonna have several teams of second division eliminate first division teams. I think that's going to be the big surprise that you're going to see after all of the games. You're going to see about 3, 4 teams from Intermedia that are probably going to beat first division teams just because they don't take it that seriously and just because these are the games that intermediate players love to play against a bigger team.
Nothing from the UFI teams. No surprises there.
Maybe the team that I mentioned, Deportivo Obrero, just because they got to play Fernando de la Mora, and this is a team that's still trying to fight for relegation in their intermedia, so they might go with an alternative team. Maybe this could be go in favor for Deportivo Obrero to go through. So, out of the teams that I saw from UFI, I think Deportivo Obrero has a better opportunity to go through.
Ralph, what do you see? Any shocks in this one?
Well, the one I was looking at was Paraguay against Luqueño because Luqueño also have that problem with kind of relegation or possible relegation. And so Paraguay is a team that is also very countryside focused, but now they've become formalized into the Paraguayan FA because they're in Intermedia. But that would be quite a cool moment for them to see. And they're not that far from the capital, so you can get like a lot of fans, hopefully like a big fan base there for the game and to watch that. So yeah, I might go for Paraguay, and that would could set them up in theory against Olimpia in the next round.
It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be It's a good month for football fans of Paraguayans in all shapes. You know, be it domestic teams, international teams, players abroad, and obviously on all fronts. As we close it out here for another great episode of Guarani Vision, for myself, Roberto Rojas, Fede Perez, and Ralph Hanna. Thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.